Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today we're here with Amy O'Connor, a geriatric care manager on Long Island. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Question, geriatric care manager. I'm going to ask you what exactly that entails. Before we do that, how did you get to become a geriatric care manager?
So those kind of go together.
Yep.
Geriatric care management involves helping clients who are struggling with maybe medical issues, things like that. Their families are looking for support, and that's basically what I do. And how I got into it was because my mother had gotten very sick, and my dad was really struggling, and the hospice social worker who came to help him was great and amazing. And I said, that's what I want to do. So
It became your calling.
So that's how I got into it. And interestingly enough, a lot of other care managers that I talk to have a similar family type of situation that sort of got them started in this caring industry.
It's so funny because so many people I interviewed for the podcast have the same story in some form or fashion.
Right.
And I started this podcast, Unlocking Senior Resources, because I started networking with people in the senior community because I spent so much time then with my parents, my in-laws, and in the 3 businesses I've been in my 44 years of business, have all dealt with seniors. But not on a healthcare level, but I've watched, as a financial advisor, I watched my seniors decline over the years, and I saw the care they needed,
Right.
and I was not qualified to give that care. I'm a financial guy. I did the financial component, but I'd refer other people. But by joining GPNY, the depth and breadth of my referral sources have gotten greater. I'm now in real estate buying business, but I buy homes from seniors.
Right.
So back in the senior business again, who knew? That was surprised to me when I got involved in the real estate. But yes, and I find it's a function of your life's experiences I get you here.
Yes.
Almost every time. So let's go into a little bit more detail exactly what senior care management entails.
So it's a very flexible, fluid type of profession. We work with families where they are and provide what they need. So that may be somebody who is a solo ager. They have no family at all or no family locally. They're depending on neighbors, but they're not comfortable with that, or maybe the neighbors aren't comfortable with that. They just want somebody who understands what their situation is so that if they have a hospitalization, somebody is aware of what's going on and can help communicate with the hospital, knows the client's needs and preferences, what they're looking for, what they're hoping for, so that if there is a hospitalization or a decline in health, somebody already is familiar with what's going on and can help coordinate with the doctors and the discharge. And then there's...
Can I stop you there for a moment?
Yeah,
I don't want to interrupt, but we're literally going through this right now. My mother-in-law today is in the hospital. She's been in hospital for this last few weeks, a month, been in hospital or in rehab or back to a hospital. And my daughter and her brother are advocates for her. And is that a separate role from what you do? Because you require a lot of advocacy. I'll leave that word again in the hospital.
So that would be, sometimes people will call me when their loved one is in a medical crisis.
Right.
And they're trying to manage all these balls in the air, and they don't know what the priority is. And once you're discharged home, all of the social work support that you got in the facilities is
Gone.
done. So now what? That is also something that I help support the families, guide them. If they want to be the primary person that the facility is talking to, fine, but I can help. This is the questions you want to ask. This is the support you're going to need. This is the services that you want to make sure you get. And they can do it, or they can come to me and they can put me on the list of people it's okay for the facility to talk to. And I can help do that also.
And that is important. You have to be on that list. I've been spending hours with my mother-in-law, but I'm not on the list. So talk to me. Who are you?
Yeah.
I speak here every day, but it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Because of HIPAA guidelines, it has to be whoever is legally allowed. And I am not legally allowed to speak on anybody's behalf unless they've given specific permission. So sometimes that's why I said I can guide the family.
Right.
Or I can take over as speaking on behalf of the family to help make sure that the discharge is safe and appropriate, and that when you come home with the services that they give you from the hospital and those end, setting up the next steps so that there's a continuation of physical therapy. Can they get out to see their doctor? Some people go into the hospital having never seen a primary care doctor in the last 20 years.
Oh, gosh.
But you can't come home with home care unless there's a doctor to write the orders. So who's going to do that? Well, I can get you a resource for that, and then we can get you a home care doctor. And so it's just helping make sure that all of the resources are in place for whatever you specifically need.
Right. You have one resource in your list of resources.
Right. Exactly. It's my job to be able to coordinate everything, but also I am not an island in myself. I'm a member of Aging Life Care Association, which is all geriatric care management, people who work in the aging industry, and we talk to each other.
Right.
So if I'm going to give you a resource, I would much, much rather give you a name of somebody I know.
Of course.
And if I don't know somebody, then I want to ask the people that I do know if they know somebody, so that I'm giving out names that came with a direct connection. I'm not just going on Google and finding somebody.
Right. That makes sense. So I interrupted you a few moments ago, about what you do, because it was just so pertinent. And so we covered that part. So what else do you, because you work with people for a short period of time or for a long period of time?
So, that can be either and it happens that people call me when there's a medical crisis, and I help get them through all the steps until they get hospice. And then usually I step back. Some people like me to stay in contact just because they know me.
Right.
But often it's just setting somebody up, getting them into hospice, and then, that would be that. Sometimes they call me and it's not really a medical crisis that ends. It's ongoing, or they just need extra support, and that might be a longer term situation depending on how much they need. I might see them once a month. I might see them every week. I might take people to doctor's appointments. It really is very flexible depending on what the family exactly needs.
Right.
Always is going to start with an assessment, because we have to find out what the priorities are of the client and then work with that. And always, my client is the older adult that I'm working with.
Right.
It's not their children, however much the children might be paying for it or asking for it or whatever. My goal is always to provide support to the older adult, that their wishes are being taken into consideration. And a lot of times kids are like, well, you have to tell my mother.
Right.
No, that's not really how it works. I talk to mom, find out what mom wants and needs and what is important to mom.
Right.
And then we try and support that. And I will be available to listen to the children, but a lot of times what I'm doing with the family is more supporting them to understand what is reasonable to expect and what is not reasonable to expect.
Expect in what capacity?
So that can really vary depending on the situation. One particular lady, the daughters were very upset because mom was a diabetic, and they continue to go through mom's house and throw out all the junk food, and all she does is goes out and buys more. So my response to that was, well, stop throwing out all of mom's junk food because clearly she's just going to go out and buy more.
Right.
So what we want to do is support mom in making the choices that are best for her with the understanding that mom is a grown-up and is capable of driving to the store and buying whatever she wants.
Right.
So, yes, do we want mom to eat better? Sure we do. But you as the family have to understand what's realistic to expect.
Right. You can't control it. You can recommend, you can suggest.
Exactly. And unless mom is incompetent and, has a guardian, she's grown up.
Yeah.
So it's really important for the family to understand if their expectations are reasonable and how to sort of manage the family dynamic and what the older adult wants. But at the end of the day, they're my client, and my job is to give them information to make good choices, but I can't control what they choose to do.
Right.
So
question, people understand through story. You have a couple of examples of the kind of services you provide, using, leave the names out to protect the innocent, I'm dating myself with that one.
Well, that diabetic lady story was a true story. That really, truly happened.
Is she still an ongoing?
No, I'm not working with that client anymore. But yeah.
Did she ever stop buying junk food?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I would guess not.
Okay. Not in the time you were there.
Right.
Okay.
No. I've recently worked with a family that I helped them through a medical crisis, in and out of the hospital, back and forth, got them into hospice, and the family was very grateful because whenever they had questions, they can get me on the phone and I talk them through the process, what to expect, what questions to ask. So they knew, if the social worker was trying to do one thing, I would say, well, you can point out this, you can point out that, try and bring to the social worker's attention the reality of the situation when mom is saying, oh, well, I want to go home. And yes, I have plenty of people to help me. Well, no, she doesn't.
Right.
So sometimes it's just making sure that the family understands the points to bring about. I have one client that I've been working with for a while now. She is in an assisted living and she has no family locally. So I go every week and I help her put away her laundry, and she's the librarian at the assisted living, so I help her work with the library there. And, there's not a lot of medical stuff, but nobody is here local to advocate for her, and the family just wants to know that someone is looking out for her. And also, if the lady is complaining about things, to know if this is a reasonable complaint. So
even a senior citizen complaining unreasonably? Oh, come on.
It happens.
I guess once in a while.
But I'll communicate with wellness and I'll communicate with the family and with the client and recreation to just see what sort of things we can do to support the lady who is somewhat young. She's in her 50s, but she has Parkinson's and it's frustrating for her. So just trying to help. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't expecting that part of the story.
So yeah, not everybody is 80 years old who needs extra support.
You're right.
So she's in her 50s and I help work with her. And some of it is just average everyday thing that if she had local family, they would probably be helping her with.
Right.
But she doesn't have that.
Right.
So her family who's out of state is very happy to know that someone is local to be able to just go in and make sure she has what she needs. I have learned how to do all kinds of things that I never knew I could do, like fix a computer.
I didn't know I could do that either. Maybe I'll find out one day. I don't know.
Why isn't the printer working? I don't know. But you know what I learned after multiple calls to this IT person?
Turn it off.
First, make sure it's plugged in.
Oh, my son always tells me, turn it off and turn on.
Turn it back off, right? But what happens with this printer is for whatever reason we can't get it to talk to the computer.
Yes.
So we have to plug it in. So that's now the first thing I have learned to check. Took me a long time to remember this, but
you didn't say you're good at that part,
but
you can do it. Yes.
I had one client bought a brand new car, couldn't figure out how to use it. So she went to the dealership like 5 times.
Right.
I ended up sitting with her in her driveway trying to figure out how to use her car and helped her with learning how to use her car. In addition to helping find somebody to help her move to New Jersey and find assisted living, I was also helping her learn to use her car.
Right. I just
So-
got a new car. I'm a minivan guy for some reason at this stage of my life, but I got a new one, and the screen, there's so many layers of buttons. I don't know how to use them.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and you don't want to learn to use them while you're driving.
Oh, no.
Way too confusing.
Yeah.
You want to change a radio station, forget about it. You need a PhD, it seems like. So that's very interesting. So you'll do anything that they need done.
I have done so many things that I never even thought I would do.
So your degree is?
I am a licensed social worker.
Did they teach you about computers?
They actually didn't.
Or auto technology or
brand new cars or anything like that.
Part of the program, okay.
Had to learn that all on my own.
And quite frankly, I think, so I'm envisioning this in my own head. Is your lack of knowledge, learning how to use this woman's car, a moment of entertainment for her as well? I'm curious because I could see like misery loves company kind of thing.
You know, she was so appreciative that I took the time to learn to use her car.
Right.
And it was over the course of like 3 sessions. We sat out there and I kept going back and forth to the point where I didn't even need Google anymore. I was just like, well, you push this and you go back.
Right.
So
you got to buy that car next. Huh?
Yeah. Well, now I know how it works.
You may as well. Your next car is that car. Life has gotten much more complicated, and senior citizens or whatever. I mean, I assume mostly your clients are seniors, but not exclusively.
Yeah.
Technology has just left them behind, and at 66, technology has sort of, I don't know, become a challenge. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I went to school. I said we talked about this earlier. When I went to college, unless you were a computer major, you weren't even allowed to use the key punch machines. It was only for computer majors. So there's no computer classes unless you're a computer major, and this in the 70s, which is not ancient history.
Right.
Well, to some people maybe, but not to me. So anyway, so it's morphed into something so obviously universal in our lives that you can't avoid it, but I learned to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
But if I need something else, I need someone like you to sit there and struggle with me. So at least I'll feel like I'm not the one who does it now.
Some seniors don't even have a computer.
They don't. Absolutely.
So, and I've tried to get resources for places who are telling me, oh, well, you just go online and you print it.
Right.
Okay, well, they don't have a computer,
right.
So they can't do that. So I end up having a lot of places send stuff to me, and then I print it and bring it to them. But yeah, there's a lot of, I'm a licensed social worker. I'm a certified care manager. I'm a certified dementia care partner. None of that has prepared me for learning how to use people's printers or cars.
So
a lot of it is learn on the job. And, there's a lot of, I have a couple of clients also with mental health issues. That's not my background, but trying to find them help, there's nobody who can help. So I find myself learning about that and doing that. I'm learning about Office for people with developmental disabilities right now, so I can help a client with autism, also in his 50s.
I was going to ask you about that because I have a daughter with Credo-Shot. It's autism on steroids, along with physical issues as well, and she's turning 3 next month. But one day, hopefully, she'll be 63. Or 73. And what happens to her? Where does she go? And she has a sibling at the moment. But siblings don't always want to step up to the plate.
Yeah, no.
And it depends what the plate looks like as well. And sometimes it's almost unreasonable to ask a sibling to step up to kind of plate that's necessary.
Right.
And that's where somebody like you comes in.
Right.
I think of you as a person dealing with seniors. When you said 50, that threw me for a loop.
I have several clients in their 50s, and it's all mental health issues for the most part. And I have had to learn about it because my original plan with this one guy was to find him a care manager who understood his situation and hand it off.
Right.
There's nobody. And when I thought I found a place, they're like, oh, well, we're a Medicaid program. He doesn't have a Medicaid number.
Right.
Like, okay, I guess I'll learn how to do it.
Right.
So I'm learning how to do it.
That and cars.
And
and
carbs.
printers. Okay, but as we talk, we keep adding things.
Yes.
The last scene, not the last scene, one of the later scenes in the movie The Jerk. All I need is this lamp. All I need is this chair. It's like you keep learning more thing. All I need to learn one more thing, just one more thing. But Steve Martin's not in this video right now. But anyway, but your scope of work, scope of tasks, whatever your responsibilities seems to be growing every day and seems to be quite vast and not limited. We just learned not limited to seniors, not limited to middle-aged people, not limited to people who are without disabilities, just getting older. So you cover a very wide spectrum of potential client.
Exactly.
And that's I wasn't expecting that. Very interesting. So with that, I have a question. I'm thinking. I have a million thoughts going through my head right now. Do you get involved in things like bill paying for clients? That's a totally different kind of person.
I would refer that to a daily money manager
Okay.
because I am not licensed for that. And I don't do anything that I feel like my license and insurance doesn't cover.
Okay.
So, like, I would not be someone's healthcare proxy or power of attorney.
Right.
Because to me, that creates a dual relationship, which goes against my license for social work. Some care managers do that. I don't.
Right.
As far as touching somebody's money, I'm not a fiduciary and I have no insurance for that.
Okay.
So I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. There are other things like I will, if someone is easily able to get in and out of a car, I do have insurance to drive them to doctor's appointments. So I would be happy to do that. But if they're in a wheelchair, I would get wheelchair transportation.
Okay.
I don't give advice from a position of always I'm an expert. Like I will often say, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical professional, but this is what I have learned. Take this information, write it down, speak to your doctor.
Right.
I travel with note paper. So when I go visit people and we talk about things, I make notes, I give it to them and, talk to your doctor about this. But I talk to people about medications and nutrition and exercise and all kinds of things all the time. And if it's something that requires a specialist, I will refer that. But I always preface everything with this is my opinion.
Right.
This is what I have learned, but I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a whatever.
Right. You know what you know.
Right.
But you know what other people know better than you.
Exactly.
And perfectly even licensed to know. That's very important. And yeah, because you can't be everything to everybody, but you're also a resource.
Right.
So I said you're one of your own cache of resources, like I said before. And that's important. And you don't want to work with someone who says they can do everything. Because nobody can do everything.
Yeah, I would not trust that.
Exactly. Or no one can do everything well.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, well, 100%. 100%.
But I think a lot of people who do what I do, we become semi-expert in a lot of things just because we've been doing it so long and we've run into so many things. And like I myself know a lot about positioning because I've worked with a lot of occupational and physical therapists.
Right.
I would not suggest that I'm an OT and can help you with these things, but I can notice things that I think might make you want to speak to a professional. Like I had a lady once who I was visiting with her and I didn't see her all the time, but I was there and we were talking about physical therapy and she was like, well, it's going okay, but I felt a little bit weak this week and I was disappointed in that. And I was like, don't worry about it, no problem. And then we were moving on and she was talking about something else and then she was talking about her blood sugar had been a little bit high. I said, you know what? I don't love those two different seemingly unrelated things that you mentioned. I think you should speak to the doctor. Sure enough, she had an infection.
Yeah.
So, and I've had that happen other times with other clients. I've had people complaining about just being weak and their legs felt funny and they were tired all the time and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. I said, have your doctor run your iron. Right. I've had that with several clients and it came back that their iron levels were low. And I had a couple of people who ended up needing infusions. I don't know this because I'm a doctor.
Right.
I'm just because I've run into these things.
Been doing it for how long? How long have you been?
I've been in geriatrics for close to 30 years.
You've seen a few things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, licensed social worker, working in care management for about 10.
Right.
So, yeah, I've worked in a lot of different places. I worked for guardian offices. I've been in nursing homes. I've been in home care agencies. I've worked with a lot of different people in a lot of different settings. So I am likely to notice things that someone who hasn't had this sort of background might not even think about.
Then you say that, and just as an outside observer in life, when you're meeting with someone else, you're not part of their life when you first meet them. I was at someone's home. I met him. We sat, talked for about an hour. He wanted to sell his house in the future. And then I met him again. He said, can we meet somewhere else for a second visit? And I met him at a diner. And he walked into the diner and said, are you okay? I said, what am I okay? I said, you're walking like you had a stroke. I'd never stroke. He's a guy's my age. And I said, I think you had a stroke. He goes, I didn't have a stroke. He went to he had a stroke. And he just wasn't walking right.
Right.
He didn't even know. So sometimes as an outside observer, and I'm an outside observer with no background in anything remotely medical, and it just became obvious to me. So things that but how he didn't know he was walking like with a major limp, I don't know. But in your case, sometimes the subtleties that you would pick up just from being around people, and I mean, you're older people. The older you are, the more issues you have as well.
Well, and sometimes I think people think that it's normal because you're old.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times, like I had one lady who the family is telling me she's just declined so fast in the last 2 weeks. I said, well, did you go to the doctor? No. Why? Because it's not normal that you would decline this fast.
Right.
Even though, yes, she's older, it's not normal to have that fast of a decline. And I think sometimes people think just because you're old, it's expected.
Right. That's true. We don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't been through it before.
Right.
So you're going through your parent for the first time.
Yeah.
So, absolutely true. Absolutely true. So in 30 years of all your different experiences, now you're working for yourself, by yourself. If somebody calls you, they get you.
Yes.
Is that correct? They're not getting an assistant or anyone else.
Yeah, no.
They
get me.
They get you. You're a one-woman show,
yeah.
And then that's what you want to be, because that's as hands-on as you can get.
Right. And I don't have to worry about any corporation telling me how to run my business or, my focus has always been the person.
Yep.
And I have found, and this is not, I'm not talking about care management agencies, but when you're working with bigger companies, they're looking at their bottom line. When you're working with care management agencies, they're thinking about the person. So my connections are pretty solid with everybody in the aging life care community, which we're all about the person.
Right. But you have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to be.
Hi, I'm Larry. And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors, attending open houses, and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
So you have one-off. First, I want to say, you talked about assessments. I wanted to ask you about that earlier. What does an assessment look like when you said the first thing you do is you have an assessment with a potential client?
The best way for an assessment to work is for me to go and meet with the person, and I cover a lot of things, from are you religious to your medications, because I want to get a feel of the whole person. I want to look around their house, see where they're living, see them walk a little bit. Where are you struggling? I'm not going to learn everything about you in the initial 2-hour visit because people hold stuff back.
You're a stranger.
Yeah. And sometimes the client is happy to have the help. A lot of times the children are pushing me on this person who thinks they are fine.
Right.
So I have to be able to be very diplomatic about the situation and just deal with that person where they are today. And sometimes they're super resistant to things at the beginning, but then as I'm able to convince them to just give it a shot.
Right.
Give it a shot, see how it goes.
Right.
They become a lot more willing. I've had people who absolutely did not want an aide in the house until they got an aide in the house and realized, oh, I can sit here. This one lady so adamantly against it until I showed up one day and she's got her feet in her little like foot bath massager. I'm like, where's your aide? Making me a sandwich. Like, okay.
I can get used to this.
Yeah, I think that you've accepted the aide. She's like, oh, yes.
And my son at 36, he's accepted that too because he travels the world, and he was down in Brazil where the house people working your home for you are very inexpensive. So the line, he said they was staying with a friend who lives down there, and he and his girlfriend was sitting with their friend, and this person shows up with a bowl of cut fruit. And he goes, no, we'd have to go cut our own fruit, but down in Brazil you can have you have 2 live-ins for for $100 a week, $50 a week. So when he came back to New York, he said, we need to hire someone to cut our fruit. So that's the term we use in our house. So this woman's having someone to cut her fruit.
Yes, yeah.
But she had to wait till she was a senior citizen to learn that. My son realized maybe we should live down in Brazil. We could have someone cut our fruit for the rest of our lives. So, but there's something appealing about that. I got to tell you.
I've gone on vacation and come home and looked at my son and been like, nobody's making me a cocktail. He's like, no, nobody's making you.
That's right. Exactly. So I'm telling you, this aging, it may not be, there may be some downside, but you have the sort of the social acceptance to get an aid, you know? Yeah. The fact that the client themselves, not the kids, that they're resistant. I'm assuming that's a very common occurrence.
Common.
And they still think the way they were 10 or 15 years ago, and and they're not.
Well, and unfortunately, especially with dementia, one of the first things that goes is your ability to recognize your need for assistance.
Right.
So you're struggling and you absolutely refuse. You can't see it.
Right.
You don't see it that you're having all these troubles.
Yeah.
I had one lady, I just worked with them for a Medicaid assessment, but you can't tell her that she needs help with anything.
Right.
And she has no ability to tell you how to make a cup of tea because she can't sequence events.
Right.
But she sat there and told that Medicaid assessor nurse, I'm independent with bathing and dressing and cooking and cleaning. And yes, I can use the phone. And her kids are like, no, she can't. None of the above. So we asked the nurse prior to the assessment, we're going to do this assessment. We're not going to argue with mom. Please call us after.
Right.
And so we went through everything again and just made it clear that is not the reality of the situation.
Well, I used to sell when I was in the financial business, a lot of long-term care insurance, dealing with the senior community. It was affordable back then.
Mm-hmm.
And when my clients went to make a claim, which I didn't have too many of them, I would tell them, please don't overstate your health.
Right.
Because if they state it the way they think it is, they're already overstating it.
Yes.
Right? So I don't want them to sit there and say they're even healthy and they think they are because they don't want to admit
Right.
Like the kids say, I want to implement mom's long-term care policy. Mom says, I don't need it.
Right.
So she's going to do exactly what you said. Exactly what you said. And I used to also prep the person who was come do the assessment. That mom's going to exaggerate. I'm sure you get it all the time, but here's the real story. And then they go in, they see it for themselves. Yeah. And I used to prep them in advance of that. So
I do the same thing. But sometimes I've had situations with long-term care insurance companies specifically where we tell them, client is hard of hearing. client is having, cognition issues. Client is struggling with
Right.
whatever. And then the assessor will call the client directly. So now we've got a client with cognition issues, hard of hearing on the phone,
Right.
just going yes
Uh-huh.
to everything they say. And then I've had them get declined
Right.
because the nurse was asking them questions that they couldn't hear and understand.
Right.
So that ended up being a whole huge issue dealing with that long-term care insurance company and going back to them and having to appeal it. And, listen, we told you this.
Right.
You cannot just call this person directly because they don't hear you.
Right.
And what they do hear, they may not understand.
And they don't want to admit they can't hear you or understand it.
So, well, with that guy, at least, he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
When we did the assessment in person and I was there, he was perfectly clear
Right.
as long as he understood the question.
Right.
And that's another thing with these assessments. They want to do everything virtually.
Right.
People can't necessarily have the same comprehension on these video calls that they do in person. So I find myself translating the computer screen to the person.
So you're there with them when they're going through the virtual assessment.
Right. So they're talking to this person who's asking questions that they're not getting.
Right. Yes.
And I'm explaining to them, because this, 24-inch space is too much.
Yep.
So
my mother was hard of hearing. She'd be talking to someone on the phone with the phone against her ear, and she'd give an answer, and I'd say, "Mom, that's not the answer. I hear."
Right.
It's not even on speakerphone, but I can hear it, and she still can't hear it, but she's answering a question that wasn't asked.
Right.
Mom, but he asked was, then she'd answer the right question.
Exactly.
So you got to translate.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people laugh. They're like, "Do you often translate English to English?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah. Yeah. English to English. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, that's a biggie. And the other comment I want to make about long-term care insurance, which applies to any insurance companies are not in the business of paying out.
Right.
They're in the business of not paying out.
Exactly.
So you really do require an advocate if you can't advocate for yourself.
Absolutely.
I had a fire in one of my businesses, and they offered me 1/10 of my insurance coverage. I hired an adjuster. I got 96% of my insurance coverage. The same applies for long-term care. If you don't know what you're doing, they're going to decline you. They don't. It's expensive when they say yes.
And that's what people don't understand about Medicaid also. They think they're going to apply for Medicaid and they're going to get the help they need.
Right.
So, no, you're not. You're going to get the help that they think they can get away with giving you.
Right.
And it's not going to be what you need. I've had people who were private paying for 2x12 aids because a client could not even reposition herself in bed, and she got 70 hours a week. 10 hours a day, 7 days. I was like, actually, that's a lot more than I thought you were.
Right.
But it's not enough.
Not enough. Because what happens those other hours?
Yeah.
Right.
Who's supposed to do that? Her 98-year-old husband? No.
Right. We're just living through that right now. Exactly that same story. What's going to look like? Yep.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
It is a problem.
And not only what you get's a problem, but getting the most you can get from Medicaid or Medicare or long-term care insurance just getting the most is a problem, and then filling in the difference.
Right.
So there's two issues here.
But even you can appeal the decision.
Yeah.
And most likely if that went to court and you were in a fair hearing, if you can go in with enough documentation, you can probably win.
Right.
But you have to accept that lowball offer first. And you have to be in the system before you can even start the appeal.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not. That's something you know.
Yeah. That's something I know. That's something I know. Another thing I know that people find really frustrating is
not
they will
the other thing you know, but another.
So many other things. They will call Medicare and speak to somebody who will tell them, "Oh yeah, Medicare will give you 35 hours a week of home care." No, they won't.
Right.
I don't care what they say on the phone.
Right.
I don't care what it says in the packet. No, they won't. There is no way you're getting 35 hours a week of home care from a Medicare agency. Never going to happen.
Then why would someone? Then that seems like very black and white.
Because technically, yes.
Okay.
The coverage is available.
It exists, but no one ever gets it, kind of thing.
It is based on the algorithm of how much help do you need
Right.
and how many hours should that take.
Right.
So if you need help taking a shower, okay, so let's give you an hour for that. If you need help going to the bathroom, let's calculate, I don't know, 2 more hours for going to the bathroom. So now we're up to 3.
Right.
You need help making a meal. How long could that take? 30 minutes? So now we're at maybe 4.5 hours.
Right.
So you get 4.5 hours, 3 days a week.
But what
Which
happens
is not
from
35.
the first bathroom to the last bathroom?
Yeah,
of the
that's
day?
not part of their algorithm.
That's not part of the algorithm. Yeah. I need a bathroom. We'll send somebody over.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's how, and people don't understand that. It's like, well, they told me I could get 35 hours a week. Technically, that's true.
Right.
Never going to happen
Right.
because their computer is not going to add up what you need and come to 35 hours a week. Not happening.
Interesting. So it exists in theory.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you also can't get home care through Medicare. That's just a home health aid. If you need a home health aid and you're going through Medicare, which only, by the way, is for immediately after a hospital or nursing home
You need a
discharge,
3-day hospital stay. What?
you have to have a three midnights
3 midnight. I knew it's 3 days. I'd never heard 3
Yeah.
midnights. Okay.
in the hospital
Okay.
to qualify.
Okay.
And then it's very short term,
I thought it was up to 100 days. And I just heard 20 days.
not at home.
Not at home. Oh, we were right. We were talking about a
Right.
rehab facility.
So, yeah, if you're going to rehab from the hospital,
Right.
you get up to, notice, up to
Right.
20 days, 100% coverage.
Right.
And then days 21 through 100, they pay a portion of it,
Right.
and you have to pay the balance. If you have a good supplement, it may pay that
Right.
balance.
And after 100 days,
Medicare pays nothing.
this literally came up in conversation 3 days ago.
Yeah. So Medicare pays nothing past 100 days.
Right. Okay.
Once you come home, they send you home with what's called CHA services, CHHA, Certified Home Health Agency. That's a continuation of your hospitalization coverage.
Okay.
And that is very short term. And you can get a home health aid for some amount of hours during that time if you have another skilled need. So if you need nursing or physical therapy or something like that, but you can't just get the home health aid.
This you need assisted
You need-
showering or bathing.
Right. You need a skilled need to qualify for that. And it's super short term. Few weeks, however long really the skilled need lasts. So if you have a wound and you're getting wound care ongoing, that
Right.
home health aid may be able to, be able to get longer term.
Right.
But if you are just getting physical therapy and they
Right.
determine after 3
Right.
weeks that you're as good as you're going to get,
They're out.
then that's the end of your CHA services.
So this is way too confusing. Anyone listening to this, what they're learning from this is, I need help. If this is me, I need help.
Yeah.
This is nothing anyone should tackle on their own.
Right.
Okay, that to me is I'm listening to you, and I'm going through it right now, and I dealt with seniors for 30 years in the financial business, and I'm confused. So surely people who are going through this for the first time absolutely need services, which sort of lends themselves to you. But before I get there, do you help people qualify for Medicaid, or is that a totally different person also? Is that someone else in your
Medicaid
role?
is a very complicated process.
Right.
I don't do it
Okay.
because
I didn't think
there
so.
is so much involved.
Yes.
I would rather refer it out to somebody who's going to catch the problems before you get there. Because what
right.
Medicaid will do, at least in New York, they will send you a letter that says we need additional information. You have 10 days to provide it.
Right.
So I would rather work with somebody who can look at all your documents before submitting it to Medicaid and say, you're going to need this, that, and the other thing. We're going to need to address this issue before it even becomes an issue, because once Medicaid flags something, they do not give you a ton of time to respond.
Right.
And can you get an extension? Yes.
Right.
But not for long.
Right.
So I prefer to work with somebody who's really more of an expert in that than I am. Will I help collect your documents and send them where they need to go and that? Sure.
Right.
But I would rather know that the person doing it is more of an expert than me.
I'm happy with that answer because I agree. It's an incredibly complex process.
But one thing to know also is if you're in a facility and you're trying to do chronic care Medicaid, they usually have a department in the facility who will do it for free.
Oh, wow.
And they know what they're doing because that's all they do.
Right.
And they want to get paid.
Oh,
so
it's their best interest to make this work.
Right. It's in their best interest. And they can usually backdate. So, like, if you become eligible for Medicaid now, but we don't have all the documents in yet, they can actually still collect them and backdate it to when you were originally eligible, because Medicaid allows you, I think, to go back like 3 or 4 months with your medical bills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they want to get paid for all those months in between your eligibility and now.
They're really motivated.
They are motivated, and they usually do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So they're a good resource if you're applying. If you're in a nursing home and you have to apply for nursing home Medicaid, I would feel comfortable usually using the people in the building. If you don't have any faith in them, you can certainly pay an outside agency to do it. Right. But the chronic care Medicaid application is so complicated. You have to go back through 5 years of financials that it would not be cheap.
We did one that. Where we buy houses, fix them up and sell them, and a lot of them we buy from seniors. And this one house was owned by a woman who was in a nursing home and another family member who was getting on Medicaid, and no one's getting Medicaid at home. And they had a tenant, and the tenant was supporting the house. No one was living but the tenant, and the tenant wanted to leave. But he knew if he left, they couldn't afford the house. He's staying long, he and his wife staying longer than they wanted, and these people wanted to let the tenant out because they knew he wanted out.
Yeah.
But if they sold the house, they would get $0. They said they're going to lose it all to Medicaid. Larry walks in the door. They say, Larry, we want you to buy the house, but we're going to get $0 for it. But at this point, it's better than we're going to lose the house, probably to back tax foreclosure or something. They can't afford even that. They're on Medicaid. So I bring in a specialist, a Medicaid specialist, who actually got them to keep. We paid $700,000 for the house. They kept $500,000 out of the $700,000. They thought they're going to get zero.
Yeah.
So they have a $500,000 bonus, and that's because he and his whole team knew exactly what to do. They had a strategy I had never heard of.
Yep.
And it worked.
Yeah.
So knowing, again, back to your resources, knowing whose shoulder to tap upon.
Exactly.
Medicaid's really complicated. But change gears to Medicare. So you're at Medicare. Medicare is not the same process applying for Medicaid.
Medicare is age-based.
Right. So you're
Medicaid
65.
Medicaid is income-based.
Right. Or also net worth,
well,
I guess. You can't have assets. Yeah.
No, you can't have assets. But it's mainly like income and like ability to access other insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Medicare is just age-based.
Right.
Something that a lot of people don't know about Medicare is they have deadlines for when you have to apply for things like your Medicare Part B and your drug plan. And if you don't do that, you get penalized forever. Forever.
I became 65 a year ago, and they stress you out before that when you're 64. And I called a whole bunch of friends of mine in the business of what to do. My wife's a school teacher, and through her, I was able to get a different kind of Medicare plan and so on. But it's the government has made becoming a senior citizen so much more complicated. The older we get, the fewer brain cells we have, the less brain matter we have, the simple life has to be. Yeah. And the older you get, the more complicated life becomes. It's really backwards.
It's not clear.
Yeah.
People don't understand that if I don't buy this drug plan by this date, I'm going to be paying a penalty for that for the rest of my life. People don't understand that. And people don't understand the difference between Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medicare supplement plans. You know, there's so many different things with insurance that I'm explaining to people all the time, and they had no idea.
Correct. So I'll ask you the question I ask everybody. And we've covered a lot of ground here, what you do, what people need done, and family dynamics and so on. If there's one takeaway, what would that takeaway be? that someone listening to this?
I just think that it's really important for families and people to understand you don't have to do this by yourself.
Right.
There are experts out there to help you. I say I'm a geriatric care manager, but we also like to use the term aging life care professional because some of my clients are not geriatric age. Everybody is aging. So as we're all getting older, we're aging. People like me understand the things that we have to deal with and the services that are available, and nobody has to do this by themselves.
I'm going to change what you said a little bit. I agree. No one has to do it by themselves. In many cases, people shouldn't do it by themselves. If you make a mistake, the mistake can be costly.
Yeah.
And so keep that in mind. It can be costly in terms of the kind of care your family is getting, the kind of care you're getting for yourself, or the kind of cost you're paying for this care, or some other lost benefit in any other area that you deal with, or you drive a car, you don't know how to use it. So with that in mind, people need to reach out to you for many reasons.
So many things.
So how do people get in contact with you? Do you have an email address?
Yeah, they can email me. I work out of Nassau County on Long Island. I'm at eldercarebyamy@gmail.com. If you're not on Long Island and you live anywhere in the country, you can go on aginglifecare.org.
aginglifecare.org.
And you can find a care manager in your area.
Okay. And it was, I'm looking at your card right now, eldercarebyamy.
At Gmail.
At gmail.com. And I'm looking at your phone number here. It's 516-744-0168. So you can reach you by phone, by email. They can find you on that website, but why bother if they're on Long Island? Call you direct.
That's right.
Don't go through another step. I thank you so much for being here today. It was a very enjoyable discussion.
Think you for having me.
And I think people learned a lot. Yeah, me too. I always have fun on these. Take care now.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.